I mean, the initial shock of things, I probably creates anxiety for all of us, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, ultimately, once I get past the like, okay, come on, Vallotton, switch your. You were born for darkness, dude. You were born to rise in darkness. Let's switch that puppy on and let's start thinking from the third heaven instead of this first heaven thinking, you know. So it takes me, you know, I'll have to say it took me a week to get there. You know,
Yeah.
the first week was, you know, it was pretty, you know, unnerving for everyone. And but yeah, I'm in that mode now and been in that mode since then. And I pretty, you know, I've been through a lot in my life, so I feel like, you know, I mean, I don't mean this in the way it could sound, but you know, I killed the lion, I killed the bear, so it's a little bit like, you know, I grew up in a tough home, I grew up in a hard
Mm.
time. I grew up with 3 assassinations when I was a boy, you know, with Martin Luther King, you know, both Kennedys, you
Yeah.
know, assassination attempt on Reagan. You know, I grew up with the Russians going to blow us up. You know, I mean, this is, I think the boomers, you know, they grew up, and then my grandparents, like every boomer, my grandparents grew up in the Depression.
Yeah.
So, you know, my grandfather and grandmother would tell stories all the time of the Depression and the Korean
Mm.
War, and the Second World War, and you know how women had to go. They had, you know, women weren't in the workforce in those years, you know, but they had to the factories. They had to go to the factories because they're, you know, they rationed tires
Wow.
because there wasn't rubber. They rationed gasoline for the war effort.
Yeah.
You know, so my grandparents would tell the stories of, you know, rationing gasoline, rationing tires, rationing, you know, food, and it was
Yeah.
rationed so that we could support the war effort.
Yeah.
And then the women went to work in the factories, especially in the, you know, ammunition factories, you know,
Yeah.
helping to for the war effort. So I think all of us like hearing those stories and then going
Yeah.
through very tumultuous times. I think kind of like I just have to like stop for a minute and think about, hey, you have no reason to be afraid. You've lived in very more uncertain times than these, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually like so encouraging. I mean, I was I think when I reached out to you on Sunday, I was telling you like I had all this fear because I
Yeah.
was reading all the news and I had, you know, Ezra, my son has you know, compromised immune system and lungs. And so I was just overwhelmed. Like it was literally like I felt that morning like this presence of fear and it paralyzed me. And then you were
Yeah.
texting
Been
me and
there lots of times.
read Psalm 91 outside, you know, out loud. And like literally it was like that came off and then faith was filled. And I was like, oh man. But even when you're talking right now, there's like a sense for me, 35 millennial who has basically my whole like cognitive life, you know, it's just
Yeah.
been this, there's been no real massive hardship on a large scale. You
No.
know, even the wars that we fought in my lifetime, they've been, oh, that's something happening over there. It's never impacted my individual life. So for
Yeah.
many people, this is the first moment where there's a disruption, like women going to work for the first time during World War
Yeah.
II, a cultural shift, right? And so there's
Yeah.
this massive cultural shift in for a generation, but for the whole world, like obviously
Yeah.
things have changed. Like, and I love because you talk about history, like we should know history so we don't repeat
Yeah.
it and learn from it. Like, and you carry now like this, you're a perspective, I think, that is really calming to the anxiety and fear that I know I have had and lots of people have had. How are you? Like, what are you telling people? How are you encouraging this? You're young because you have a young staff as well. Like you have a ton of young
Yeah.
people at Bethel and
Yeah, we do.
globally. So like, how are you using this time to pastor those people? And like, what are you doing with that?
Well, I think that, you know, you know that saying that more is caught than taught.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people are, you know, when I walk in the room, they're looking in my eyes. Like before I say anything, like, does he look scared? Does he look worried?
Yeah.
And, you know, and I'm not worried and I'm not scared. And so, you know, I feel like there's just a calming thing when people are, you know, feel reassured. That happens. And, you know, and I've addressed our team several times, the first week especially. And, we just worked towards a plan. Okay, let's have a plan. Darren, here's the deal. The virus obviously is serious, right? I mean, it's serious. And we're doing, like I know you are too, we're following the guidelines that the government has given us and doing our very best to be submissive and do what our president has asked us to do, what our governor's asked us to do. Whether or not we think that's exactly the right steps or not, I mean, I think it's important that we do what we're supposed to do. But and virus is killing some people. It's not a high rate, not a high kill rate, but still people are dying. And so those things are a reality. We have to have empathy and compassion, and to be very careful how we speak about the positive things that are happening right now, because there's nothing positive about people who die.
Right.
And especially our elderly.
Yeah.
But I see, that this is a divine reset.
Yeah.
And that God is resetting our values, our moral values, our values around what's important, life, the whole pro-life movement, I feel like so important that we realize racism, like these things matter to God. Transgenderism, transgendering children, which I feel like is the kind of the iniquity of the Amorites is complete from the standpoint of, you're mutilating children, you're aborting babies, racism, the love of money, the lust of the eyes, all these things that, we're being frog boiled,
Yeah.
And it's not like one day we wake up and like let's have some bad values here, it's just
right.
over long periods of time. And I think that this is a divine reset. And, one of the things that we're seeing happen right now is young people are having to, take care of how they behave so that older people don't get sick.
Yes.
And so, we have the Malachi 4 thing happening in culture.
Wow.
Spontaneously, because the young are, the hearts of the fathers, in the last days, I'll send Elijah the prophet. He'll restore the hearts of fathers to sons and daughters, the hearts of sons and daughters to fathers. And my point is that we're already seeing like sons and daughters saying, I don't want my father to die. I don't want my mother to die.
Yeah.
And so, because the virus is, it's not really a too big of a deal if you're a healthy young person. It's like, I got the flu.
Yeah.
But, if you're an old person, especially that has health issues, compromised immune system or things like you were talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, your son's an exception, but
right.
Most youngsters get this, and it's like they're gonna be sick for 2 weeks, and off you go. But but it could be deadly for your parents, your grandparents.
Yeah.
So I've seen like this thing of honor where young people are literally behaving in a way that says to their parents and grandparents, we want you around.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's this restoration of fatherhood, motherhood, children, happening naturally already. And I feel like there's a thing about, we're just aborting babies, like, and I understand that the ladies who have done that, of course, are completely forgiven. And I understand that there are social issues that are bigger than, I understand this is a much bigger conversation.
Right.
But I also understand that one of the factors is the value for life.
Yes.
How important life is.
Yeah.
And I feel the Lord, I feel like, how your computer sometimes it locks up or it starts doing crazy stuff. And I used to call my tech department all the time. They go, Kris, before you call us,
just restart.
Turn your computer off.
Right.
Turn it back on.
Yeah.
And turn your phone off. Turn it back on, and I'm like, oh, that's funny. That solves about 90% of my issues, and I just realized, like, I feel like the Lord's just turning the computer off,
Yeah.
Turning it back on, defragging us.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that, that it's painful, but powerful,